Wonderful movie.
Oh, thank you. That's very generous of you to say that.
Really, I really enjoyed it.
Go ahead.
Dean, this is such a smart movie. Tell us about your film.
Well, a few years ago, a friend of mine, the writer Brandon Boyce, who'd written Apt Pupil and Wicker Park, he called me and said that he had just written a new screenplay, and before he sent it out, would I read it and give him some notes? So I read the script. I couldn't put it down. It was a huge page turner, and I called him up and I said, I have one note for you. Don't show this to anyone, because I want to make this movie. And he and I started a partnership on this, you know, and he was involved. Obviously, he wrote the script, but he was involved very much in the pre-production. He was there every day of the shoot and had been involved in every cut of the film. So it was, I have to give Brandon an enormous amount of the credit for how smart the film is.
What was your pitch?
To him?
Not to him, to raise the funds.
Well, normally, you go out to movie studios and you have to convince them to make your film, but this was a case where I was so in love with the movie and I wanted to do it properly, and that meant casting it the way that I wanted to cast it, shooting it where I wanted to, with the crew that I wanted. So we didn't go out with this film. We just decided we're going to make the film, and we wrote a check. So it was a big gamble for us as a company. We shot it independently. We produced it independently, we financed it independently, and now we're actually releasing the films into theaters independently. So it's a big step for us as a company, but we're doing it because we love this project and we really want to do it the right way.
You've got such wonderful actors. I mean, Robert is just amazing.
Yeah. There's not a lot of actors his age who'd be willing to check their ego in the way he had to for this part. To make the pivotal moment of this movie work, he had to portray someone who becomes debilitatingly frightened. It's humiliatingly frightened. Not a lot of actors would be able to do that or be willing to do that, to show themselves in such a vulnerable way. But because Robbie's so committed to that part of the character, it made the moment incredibly human. And it made us want his redemption to happen. And without that, I don't think the entire engine of the film would have worked. I really credit his performance for making the movie function, to make us root for this character, because while it's on the page, it easily could have been screwed up.
I think you did a fantastic job. It's a brilliant piece of suspense.
Thank you.
How do you maintain that suspense?
One of the writers who actually used to work on Doctor Who worked on my TV series, and before I was doing this movie, we had a discussion about suspense. And he was saying, if you do a scene in a bathroom and you're trapped in the bathroom with a serial killer, it's scary, but it's more kind of violent and actiony. But if you're trapped in the bathroom and the serial killer's on the other side of the door and you could just barely hear him, that's terrifying. And that was a real lesson for me, and it kind of changed how I approached every scene. It became more about what we don't know, what we don't see, what we hear. And it created for me a new way of thinking about blocking my scenes, shooting my scenes. I'd never done anything remotely like this before. And so I had to go through a big education on how to make this film.
Were you winking at Hitchcock there when, with the shower?
Well, in a way, it's like several times removed. In other words, Hitchcock created the cinematic language for films like this. But I grew up really on early Brian De Palma movies, which were clearly influenced by Hitchcock. And then, in more recent years, films like Disturbia, which also harkened back. So I would say that yes, Hitchcock began this kind of language, but other filmmakers developed it and it evolved, and I was influenced by it all.
So when you say your blocking has changed completely, elaborate a little bit, because this is really interesting.
Well, there was just all kinds of things that we did differently that I've never done before. In pre-production, I warned the actors that the camera was going to be much closer to their face than they're accustomed to, and it was going to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable. But by doing so, we had these kind of extreme shots, and it felt very intimate, and it felt like we were inside their pain with them. And I think the awkwardness of having the camera that close to them did something to their performances. And I've never done anything like that. I've been much more traditional in my framing and the position of the camera, what lenses I was using. This was really a top-to-bottom rethink.